It's Wednesday, August 13th, and welcome to this edition of Whether or Not. Joining me is Brian Carsons, and I want to say thank you for working yesterday. Had a late night of softball on Monday, so when you have those late nights, you need some extra time just to recoup.
I totally understand. No, it was a good week. Yep, had a show of some weather, I would say a little more meat behind some of the pattern details. Okay. And, I didn't talk so much about the or not section of the show yesterday, but there's room today. I'm sure you're going to be sharing a few new little interesting things.
Yes, we'll try to save those until the end. In the meantime, here's a look at today's outline. We are looking at scattered storms. Those are returning, as well as the strong to severe weather. We have a slight risk for severe weather today, western central, south central South Dakota. We return the high heat and humidity. It's not just for a day or two. It looks like this will last straight through the weekend once it gets here. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about this cooler last week of August. I have a couple of things that go along with it. And we'll talk about our daylight. We're losing daylight more than 2.5 minutes per day now in Sioux Falls, maybe a little longer in the north and Aberdeen. Our average high temperatures are also starting to go down.
You must be saying fall is coming.
Fall is in the air.
Is it? It's coming. Here before you know it.
Should mention this too. 55 degrees this morning in Sioux Falls. Coldest temperature we've had. Well, second coldest temperature we've had since June 11th.
55. I can live with that, though. A little bit of fresh air in the house, and it's kind of nice to get some cooler mornings here and there. But looking at the short-term forecast, we're going to go just the opposite, aren't we, here into the weekend?
Right. We'll return to our summer heat and humidity. We'll talk about that coming up after this. Welcome back to Whether or Not. Scattered storms are back in our forecast, Brian. We've had a nice dry stretch of weather. I should look back. I know Monday I talked about our consecutive days of not receiving measurable rainfall. And we might be pushing our longest stretch so far this summer.
Yeah, it's in fact, it's funny as you're out in the countryside, the dust is flying quite a bit now on the gravel roads. And it's dried out, but, crops, I would say for those that have been picking up moisture lately, it still looks pretty good. One thing that I will say, though, is that as we enter the cycle of weather going into the weekend, you're right, these conversations about scattered thunderstorms are returning. We will, though, be dealing with a cap on the atmosphere as we go through time. So it will tend to inhibit some of these storms. So we're going to see some interesting features here on Futurecast.
We were watching things this morning with just maybe a scattered shower or two across western South Dakota. We had a conversation even behind the scenes during the commercial breaks. Some people like to call them sprinkles. And I said, Brian, sprinkles go on ice cream.
Yeah. That's not one of your favorite words, is it?
I don't know why it's not. But
and sprinkles, I said back to you, I'm like, well, okay, so if it's 95, I'm picturing Rapid City, and yes, it is hot, and if you have a little virga or basically a moisture-starved shower, yeah, you'll probably have some folks with some sprinkles, but then again, you also will have some storms, and That's where we're at this afternoon. We're watching the latest modeling here. And so, yeah, that's all kind of messaging, isn't it? How we depict things and what are the biggest things to mention, but yeah, little things behind the scenes.
Anyway, I just thought that's kind of funny. I should put a graphic together with that. I know we have the ice cream cone in the system, and we just use the word sprinkles and throw it on the ice cream cone. Call it good.
Do it, yeah.
We've been following those showers in western South Dakota throughout the morning, and then it was interesting because as they moved to the east, they started to grow a little bit, and then we'll see as we get into the afternoon if they continue anywhere from Aberdeen, maybe near Watertown, as Futurecast is showing that, but it's also showing developing thunderstorms in western South Dakota. Those will grow as they move to the east. This is at 10 o'clock this evening. Showers, thunderstorms from Pierre down toward Winter. As we get into the overnight, I think they'll weaken, and Futurecast is showing that. They will weaken as they move to the east and southeast, but not so much that we have to toss out that chance for a shower or thunderstorm. We'll keep it in during the overnight hours in eastern and southeastern Kettleland. During the overnight, western and central South Dakota will start to dry out. We can start tomorrow with a scattered shower, thunderstorm. Then we'll have clearing skies, reload the atmosphere again. The humidity returns. We'll watch for these shower and thunderstorm chances as different boundaries do start to set up across the state. And those are good focal points for these showers and thunderstorms. That's a look at Friday, maybe an isolated shower thunderstorm that holds into the early afternoon in southeastern KELOLAND. But for today, that slight risk of severe weather. That's level 2 out of 5 as issued by the Storm Prediction Center. For that area highlighted in yellow, goes from Rapid City, Pierre, Chamberlain, real close to Mitchell, and areas to the south. So as we start to break that down, wind is looking like the main threat out of any storm that does develop. That's showing up western, central South Dakota, more or less where we had that slight risk. That hail risk is a secondary threat, and there's enough spin in the atmosphere and maybe give us a tornado risk, as it is outlined as a 2% chance. And again, that means you take a point anywhere there in green, 25-mile radius around that point. If you get a storm to develop, there's about that 2% chance that it will become tornadic. So that's a look at today's outline for severe weather. And Brian, it kind of goes hand in hand with this heat and humidity that will return. We'll slowly return with humidity today, much higher as we get beyond today. And our heat will also start to pick up. Not to say, today will be hot in western and central South Dakota. Highs in the middle 90s today.
Right. Yeah. We definitely have some heat. The farther west you live to, it's mainly a dry heat to kick things off. But you're right. We're seeing surging dew points coming back. And so that goes hand in hand with the instability. But the question will be how that interacts with the boundaries that float back and forth, because there's clearly going to be that action going on. And then subsequently, too, how the cap will inhibit some of those storms. I do see some pretty strong evidence that we'll have some time periods where we're going to be capped. But, boy, you can break that, too, and that's where things can get a little more tricky into the weekend.
Yeah, from what I've noticed this morning after looking at some modeling data with our instability is it doesn't seem to be as widespread as what we had maybe just a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
So that might go hand in hand with what you were talking about with that cap in the atmosphere. How much of the real estate will be capped with these higher temperatures and higher dew point numbers coming in? So again, the instability, it doesn't cover as much of an area. It shows up here and there, which may give us better chances, I would think, of developing these thunderstorms.
Yeah. As long as the front's in the region, you don't have to have all the conditions, necessarily high for severe weather to get some severe weather. And dew point favors a lot of moisture stacked in the atmosphere. And you're right, these dew points, they're climbing. It's just a matter of how fast. And then once they hit like near 70, will they sustain that level going into the weekend?
And you see a 70 dew point temperature in Pierre later this afternoon. There's that drier heat that you mentioned for western South Dakota and Rapid City. Dew point numbers in the 50s, but that changes as we get into the later part of this week. This is Friday, showing widespread 70-degree dew point temperatures in central, eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. 60s return across western KELOLAND. And once these higher dew point temperatures get here for later this week, I think they'll stay throughout the weekend. You notice even into Sunday, still with those middle 60 dew point temperatures in Rapid City. Low to middle 70s. Those numbers cover central and eastern KELOLAND. So, Brian, we have to bring back the heat index, what it feels like, combination of the air temperature, the amount of moisture, humidity that's in the air. These numbers will return to the 100s as early as, say, Friday, south central, southeastern South Dakota. Looking at those heat index values in the 100s, lower 100s, or near 100 on Saturday in eastern, southeastern South Dakota. And I think I have Sunday loaded here too. Maybe not as high, but still getting into those 90s across eastern and southeastern South Dakota, stretching into northwestern Iowa. And even into next week, our numbers may cool a little, but closer to average at the beginning of the week. And then those numbers may start to slide.
Yeah, and that's part of, that mid-August pattern where these cold fronts from Canada will probably come back, and be interesting to see how fast that kind of unfolds here. But at least the cycle of weather tends to go down a little bit, and I'm kind of glad about that.
Now, as I mentioned before, we are losing some daylight. So we'll talk more about our cooling that will come, I would say, probably later in the week for next week, and especially going into the last week of the month. Stay with us. You're watching Weather. Welcome back to Whether or Not. Before we get into this cooler weather, every time I say that, I get a little smile on my face.
We're
as much
there
as,
are people out there that love hot weather, by the way.
Oh, I know.
I know there are. I talk to them all the time.
I know. As much as I enjoy summer and doing summer activities, I've come to the conclusion that I get tired of being warm or hot in the summer. And then just the opposite in the winter, I get tired of being cold.
Well,
and I'm ready for the seasons to change.
Yes, and that's always such a nice thing about this part of the country is that, yep, you get that dose of whatever it is, and then anticipate that change is going to come, and then we get a new season, and I'm all for the taste of fall too. So it'll be here before you know it.
Oh, I know. So we should still enjoy the summertime.
That's right.
The heat and humidity, we talked about that. That's returning. But something we haven't talked about before we talk about this cooler air, Brian, is the rainfall, precipitation we've been receiving or not receiving.
Right. And this is a map that we like to show. And just to continue to update this, and I actually wanted to add a little bit more to this as well, but this is just the 30-day picture. So a lot of green, a lot of blue. Most of you know that if you've been following our broadcasts. And, of course, the deficits are there, South Central South Dakota, and that goes hand in hand with some of the drought monitor tendencies, which, of course, that'll be a new update, too, coming out. Now, this is a different map I wanted to show that looks specifically at some of these moisture trends. I'm going to kind of clean this up a little bit. This is 14 days, so the last 2 weeks. And blue is where we're above normal. Red or maroon colors are below. So there's still a lot of, you look at South Dakota, North Dakota, there's been pretty decent streaks of rain and some heavy rain in there. But again, looking at where we're running the 30-day deficits, it kind of piles in on what we see there too in the last 2 weeks. If you go back farther back in time, so let's go back out to 60 days, 2 months of data. All right, so same idea. Blue and green, above normal. The tannish color is below. And so those deficits are there around Pierre down to Winter. That's an area that is a little drier than they should be for this time of the year. The southeast, a lot of rain on average. Most of those numbers are above 100%. And the Black Hills has done quite well the last 60 days. Now, it's interesting because, you get into the fall season and sometimes these things can, it depends on how much rain we continue to get. If those areas stay wet, that's good, but also sometimes that vegetation can dry out quickly and you get more fire danger. There's 90 days ago. Same thing, Scott. Look at that deficit right there in the South Central. Now, again, the numbers aren't that bad. I mean, 90 to 100% of normal, but, it kind of gives you a sense of how things started. And, even on a broader scale, that's just the Dakotas. This is the whole central region of the country. And you can see that, we've had thunderstorms from North Dakota clear down to Texas. It's been overall a pretty active pattern. So, that's going to finish up the crops in the Western Corn Belt. And now, leading into your cooler pattern,
yes,
we'll see what happens next with that.
And speaking of that cooler pattern, I want to show you this. The lowest temperatures we've had since midnight for today. We fell to 55 in Sioux Falls. Mentioned this before. That's the second coolest temperature we've had since June 11th. June 10th, I think we were 43, 45. Okay, so I said, well, let's stop there. Let's go back to June 11th. I think it was in the middle of July we fell to 53 for one morning.
Yep. And that was that cool spell. I think I was out of town during that, if I remember correctly. But I do remember hearing about it. And certainly, the Canadian air can definitely do that. So let's see how that longer range picture starts evolving.
And now that you mentioned that you were out of town, I remember that we were looking at we had some areas in north central, northeastern South Dakota fall to the top 3 for coldest temperatures. We even set a couple of records with numbers in the 40s, north central, northeastern South Dakota in the middle of July. So it was a quick hit of cooler weather. But you know what? This may happen a little more frequently as we do go forward over the next couple of weeks because, we're looking at entering the fall. So we'll see what happens here, but don't be too surprised to see these temperatures continue to see more numbers in the 50s, maybe even some 40s on occasion. But I might be getting ahead of myself just a little too much. All right, well, here's our above average air. Okay, we have this going into this coming weekend. It sticks around. We've been mentioning with these higher temperatures, higher dew point temperatures, we'll continue with these scattered shower and thunderstorm chances, much like what we've had throughout much of the summer. But there's that hit of cooler air that starts to come in during the last week of the month. That's August 26th, already trying to pick up on temperatures that will be below average, and that covers much of, we'll say, eastern South Dakota, throughout Minnesota, much of the Great Lakes, getting this hit of colder air that will return. And we'll see how long that lasts, okay? Well, it'll probably be just a day or two. And Brian, how about this? You know that cicada folklore? This was brought to my attention in mid-July when they were hearing cicadas. Okay, and then they say 6 weeks after hearing cicadas that you can probably, you might get a frost. So I did my research. I kept this graphic around. This is the last week of August. What do we have for record lows? Well, they range anywhere from 34 degrees in Sioux Falls to 40 degrees. That's the record lows that whole week, the last week of August. And you see the other areas coming in, 34 to 41 for Mitchell, 32 to 37 in Watertown. And I picked the last week of August because 6 weeks out from the middle of July, well, that's what puts us there into the last week of August. Well, I just showed you that area of getting that cold temperatures in eastern South Dakota around the 25th or 26th. What model do we usually look at when we want to look at cold air, do you think?
Yeah, looking at the Canadian.
At the Canadian model. So I brought this model up.
Okay.
And I'll try to go through a couple of areas here for you. Now, what we're interested in is the 25th, maybe 26th here. I have that cursor going in the bottom portion of your screen. That's where you do see the graphic, those lines starting to dip a little bit. Here's 40 degrees at the very bottom. Notice how we're trying to get close to that 40-degree mark. Well, what's the coldest we have right here? Well, it shows up during the 25th of August. As we do go up, I think we do have a number that falls to 42. When you look at all these different runs of the Canadian model, the coldest it comes in at is 42. Now, I'm not saying that we're falling to 42 degrees toward the 25th, 26th of the month, but we are getting some better agreement just on the Canadian of bringing in some colder mornings as we get into that last week of the month. Yep. So does that have anything to do with hearing the cicadas in the middle of July? It's funny how if you dive deep enough, you might be able to find a correlation here and there.
You might, yeah. And I like the identification of those types of things that you see because it just makes us more aware of what to watch and maybe pick up on some clues here and there. I don't know if you have a chance or not on the other machine here. This is the AI version of the European model. So it's different. This is not the Canadian. Mm-hmm. But graphically speaking, you kick this out, and it definitely has, look at Manitoba. I mean, there's definitely some chilly air up there.
It's pointing to something. Now,
this is just a data run. This is the data as of this morning, but it definitely shows, right? Let me go backwards right there. Look at North Dakota. That is chilly. So let's see. Let's identify that. And, just for fun, Scott.
Sure.
Just since we're on here, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit closer. So that's a daytime temperature of 67 in Sioux Falls. It has temperatures in the afternoon on that calendar date in the 50s up toward Devil's Lake and Grand Forks. And then, of course, it's got morning lows in the low 40s in western South Dakota. So let's see. We'll just lay it on the table, and we'll put a little sticky note on this little side note. We need to come back to it.
Yeah, I have a whole notebook here. Since we started, doing Whether or Not.
I like
this
that.
Goes back to, how long have we been doing this? I think I've been doing 20 some odd shows so far, so close to 30.
Yep, and
keep those notes around. You never know when they come in handy.
It's good to keep track of that. So I'm glad you got a system in line.
And what do we say about the models picking up on the cold air?
Well, they just struggle. It is a known fact that when we forecast temperatures going out beyond within the 7-day forecast, this happens all the time. You'll see the modeling gravitate toward the warmer side instead of, we need to, latch on to cold air because it's almost a given almost all the time that this will come in colder than what originally was projected. Now, that's not always the case, but it seems to be, if you look at averages, there's definitely your betting odds are with, okay, let's tug this down. And sometimes we try to get ahead of that. Obviously, in the summer months, you typically expect cold fronts to not be as strong. They get washed up. But now, before you know it, we're heading into fall. So we get to kind of do a test run or two.
You're good with dates. And, since we're bringing up this cold air, what Labor Day was it when they had all that snow in the West? They had measurable snow. They had snow in the hills.
Yeah,
that wasn't that long ago.
It was not. I know it's within the last 5 years or 10. Well, 5 to 10. Mm-hmm. I'll do a quick scan on that. But yeah, you're right. I do remember that very well because the Black Hills, we had snow forecasts running into Labor Day weekend, and you think about that. That's not that far away.
It is not. It is not.
But it's the Black Hills too. And that's where,
but
again,
it's a sign of colder air.
Well, right. And cooler air, you get an upper level low that comes through. And obviously, yeah, you can definitely, get some of those kind of snows out there in September. And then, of course, it just, the history books show that October can be even worse, obviously. So
right. And we know about October and blizzards in the West as well.
That's right.
Well, here we go with our daylight average high temperatures. We are losing daylight. Here's a quick graphic of the second half of August. You take the 4 forecast cities that we like to highlight here, and it averages out to around we'll lose 45 minutes worth of daylight. So that will play with our average high temperatures, as many locations lose about 3 to maybe 4 degrees when you look at the climate average high. So we go from the low to middle 80s to the lower 80s, near 80, across eastern, southeastern South Dakota. So it goes hand in hand with this cooler weather that will eventually come in here during the last week of the month. But again, before then, we'll get our warm air, our hot air to return with numbers probably into the 90s, even a chance to hit 100. The thick humidity also is expected to return. That's our time for this latest edition of Whether or Not. Thank you for joining us.